Earth made its approach in peace, but the aliens replied with merciless fire, setting off a primal alarm. The Nemesis, the most sophisticated warship of humanity, stirred. And now, as cosmic punishment approaches, the galaxy groans at the nightmare they accidentally unleashed. First contact had always been envisioned as a moment of sublime unity, a meeting of minds and hearts that would pave the way to interstellar friendship. Humanity, in its wistful, probing longings, had carefully set up for that transcendental rendezvous. A grand armada of diplomatic ships, filled with emissaries, scientists, and cultural envoys, took off to greet the unknown. Their message was simple and earnest: we come in peace. But the universe, as it turns out, had a cruel twist in mind. On a calm day in Earth's orbit, the flagship of a first contact mission floated into the designated rendezvous area, and their alien counterpart awaited. The alien race, a still mysterious body of tech-obsessed life forms, had long considered humanity nothing more than an afterthought in the grand space-time narrative. Earth's weak efforts at outreach appeared naive to them, an affront to their long-standing supremacy. The shock was immediate and complete when the aliens opened fire without uttering a word. The sleek diplomatic ship, designed to usher in a new epoch, became a flaming wreck in seconds. The attack was quick, deliberate, and brutal, made not to negotiate, but to eradicate any sign of an emerging human threat. This terrible blunder was not only a tragedy, it was a statement. In their hubris, the aliens had thought that getting rid of the diplomats would send a message. Humanity was weak. It had no right to belong to the stars. But the unintended result of that brutal ambush was far more than they had expected. Beneath the facade of humanity's defensive window dressing lay a secret project, a warship designed not for conventional combat, but as a deterrent to extinction. This ship, the Nemesis, had been built in the deepest secrecy by Earth's military and scientific elite. It was the culmination of decades of research, combining cutting-edge technology, unconventional physics, and the desperate ingenuity of a species at its most limit. The Nemesis was a ship unlike anything the galaxy had known. Its design featured a hull embedded with experimental alloys capable of absorbing and redistributing energy from enemy fire, and its weapon systems were powered by principles that bent the laws of conventional physics. Quantum disruptors, gravity-manipulating cannons, and cloaking technologies that made it nearly invisible at the most critical moments, all woven together into a covert, deadly instrument. Its design was as daring as it was perilous, a floating testimony to humanity's determination to survive and strike back at those who would wish it undone. The enigmatic commander of this formidable warship, Commander Adrian Cross, lay at its center. A veteran of innumerable skirmishes on the last bastions of Earth, Adrian was a man of steely resolve and unorthodox tactics. His career had been forged in the fires of previous wars, when every front was a fight against impossible odds. Now, when the alien armada's assault on the first contact vessel kindled a spark of vengeance in that deep recess representing the human collective, Adrian had been called upon to take the Nemesis into battle, the battle to end all battles, a battle that would determine not just the fate of Earth, but the balance of power for the whole galaxy. Panic and outrage erupted among the surviving population as word of the ambush traveled like wildfire across Earth's communication networks. Governments rushed to grasp the magnitude of the disaster and decide how to respond. In secure, high-security bunkers, military planners debated a course of action behind closed doors. Some called for all-out war against the alien aggressors, and a few argued that a reckless response would condemn humanity to an eternal cycle of violence. But for Commander Cross and his crew, there was no time for hesitation. The ambush had not only shattered hopes for peaceful coexistence, it had lit a fire of retribution that could not be snuffed out. In the wake, as Earth's leaders lamented the death of what might have followed a new dawn, the Nemesis came online. Far below, in a hidden orbital production facility, technicians and engineers worked desperately to perform last-minute calibrations on the warship. Each bit of my monstrous suite was spun to life in increased urgency. Every line of code, every weld, a kind of tacit vow to avenge my losses and punish anyone who dared cross this valley again. The Nemesis wasn't just a weapon. It was humanity's last stand, a threatening statement to the cosmos that if you forced Earth into the corner of the universe, it would release a horror of which no one could soon forget. Little did the alien assailants know as they celebrated their victory that their barbaric act had triggered a series of events that would be shaken to the roots of interstellar dominance. It was a stage set for reckoning, one that would see humanity left behind as a peaceful, what was considered a weak, underestimated species turn into an entity capable of wreaking terror on an entire cosmic empire. If the aliens had lulled the galaxy into complacence with their overwhelming superiority, then the galaxy was now readying itself for the storm, and embodied by the nemesis and the unbreakable spirit of a people scorned but still far from defeated. Shook the god of destruction the instant that nemesis surged out of its orbital binding. In the empty void of space, the warship sped toward the alien armada. A dense cluster of sleek, merciless ships that had presumed success was in their grasp. This would be the party they had come to attend, a mere demonstration of statistical supremacy, but the appearance of a single defiant human warship, this was a surprise. Their sensors, fine-tuned to register traditional signs of large-scale invasions, fought to make sense of the erratic signature of the nemesis. Commander Adrian Cross stood at the helm, studying the enemy formation through the ship's augmented reality displays. He peered into the vicinity, each eye a lens forged to see through the haze of years of battle. As the most formidable, the bulk of the aliens and cruisers coalesced, forming a barrage of power and steel. Tengikan Tentera, Meskapun Kalaf Impat Bellis Disintegrasi, Idik Hadapan Rim Nemesis Beta Technology Kabankadan Physical. Its quantum disruptors and gravity-manipulating cannons stood ready. Cross knew that the coming engagement would stretch the limits of human ingenuity and determination. The nemesis closed the distance, launching itself into the fray without waiting for further orders. As it approached, the warship's cloaking systems flared on and off, producing ghost images to confuse enemy targeting arrays. The alien cruisers unleashed volleys of high-energy plasma, aiming for what they believed to be an easy target. Instead, they were bombarded by bursts of erratic quantum energy. Each sibilant pulse from the nemesis frayed the shields of enemy ships, opening temporary voids in the energy barriers surrounding the vessels of war. One event cascaded into another in rapid succession. The nemesis made a rapid series of unexpected, erratic maneuvers, hard turns, vertical drops, lateral slides, as if appending inertia itself. In an ingenious exhibition of strategic maneuvering, it weaved a tightly wrung pathway through a scythe of enemy ships, its course lit only by the reckless mucilage of electric discharge bouncing off its hull. Ether, the ship's onboard AI, was constantly evaluating how the enemy was behaving, recalculating the ideal trajectories as necessary. The alien fleet swayed in space, unaccustomed to such raw, calculated maneuvering. Back on the enemy command bridge of one of the larger cruisers, high-ranking alien officers frantically exchanged communications. Their algorithms, trained to chart uniform and predictable maneuvers, failed to predict the nemesis's every move. Several alien ships got entangled inside fields with overlapping vectors of destructive quantum energy. The shield of one cruiser buckled under the sustained bombardment, and it erupted into a shower of sparks and debris, the remnants floating silently into the void. Commander Cross kept his concentration on the nemesis's bridge. "Activate countermeasures," he barked, holding his voice steady through the cacophony of alarms and data updates rattling at double speed. The ship engaged its heaviest armor on his command and the temporal shifter, a starship system that bent the very fabric of space in a limited area around the hull, suspending the enemy's projectiles as they approached. Twirling back to the right not only bought a few precious seconds, but also introduced yet another layer of resolution into the nemesis's already spastic movements. Gone was the confidence of the alien fleet in their numbers. Automated drones swept the seas, tracking the elusive target, but Nemesis always swerved before the pursuit could close. Whenever a drone managed to lock on the billion-dollar warship, a sudden spike in propulsion from the ship's gravity cannons sent it tumbling off into space, the brief bombardment of the ship's sensors overwhelming it from the sudden change in trajectory. The vacuum was filled with concentrated explosions of incandescent energy, announcing the confrontation of immeasurable weight against obstinate ingenuity as the contested voice of the world. The Nemesis was a storm incarnate, though alone. Its weapons struck with surgical precision, striking the weak points in enemy cruisers with an almost ethereal accuracy. Every successful hit came with a further damaging of the invader's confidence, and the effect was fracturing a once impervious formation. But the problem was far from solved. The alien fleet was adapting in real time, launching coordinated flanking moves and recalibrating their energy fields to try to corral the unpredictable warship. Commander Cross was acutely aware that the next few minutes would decide the fate not only of his ship, but of mankind. The clock was ticking, and every second that went by raised the stakes, turning the battlefield into a crucible of chaos and innovation. Across that deadly competition, firepower alone would not win. Only the infinite human ability to think and strategize and outthink and outstrategize. As the battle continued, the Nemesis bombardment started tearing apart the alien fleet's previously well-ordered formation. The tide of fighting changed. What started as a display of overwhelming numbers had devolved into a scramble for survival. But while their cold, efficient behavior was perfect in its data matrix, they had moved individually and were organizing into formations, the alien cruisers beginning to break formation as responses that were tailored being obliterated by the sudden, unpredictable moves and the quantum bursts. Commander Adrian Cross's cool defiance was now replaced by the desperate urgency of the alien commanders. Their communications thrummed with confusion as senior officers called for emergency regroupings that were useless against an enemy that would not conform to any established recipe for defeat. Alien drones that swarm and neutralize targets en masse were blasted apart, strip by strip, by the gravity-manipulating cannons of the Nemesis. One by one, these smaller ships passed through localized explosions of disruptive energy, their circuitry shattered and propulsion systems destroyed, leaving them to drift into the cold void of space. The Nemesis danced through the battlefield of craggy spires with an unearthly grace, somehow wading through the ever-present debris around her. Its temporal shifter throbbed in intermittent cycles, contorting space in synchronic bursts of energy that deflected incoming fire and distorted the enemy's perceptions. In the deep black, the aliens' target acquisition systems were becoming erratic amid an onslaught of dimensional anomalies. Their sensor arrays, once crystal clear, flickered and failed to lock on to the target that seemed to materialize and dissolve at the blink of an eye. A wave of fear began to spread through the alien forces. Control rooms, previously brimming with confidence, now saw desperate commands, pleas for recalibration. But alien cruisers, those who couldn't adapt to this unending quantum bath, started to experience catastrophic failure. Dozens of massive ships were shredded as energy conduits fizzled, their cores collapsing in brilliant displays of cosmic flame. Those battleships you used to see powerless against all of us, watching as they broke apart like useless rusted junk. That's what made the alarm swell through the ranks of the aliens, doubt taking root in their minds, fear spreading rapidly. Meanwhile, back on the bridge of the Nemesis, Commander Cross was an island of calm resolve. He stared into the constantly shifting tactical displays, where every lost cruiser and inoperative drone was a reminder of his ship's relentless might. Continue evasive protocols and prepare for the next volley, he ordered in a tone that left no room for argument. His crew was battle-hardened and resolute, and they responded with seamless precision, each member in sync with the ship's rhythm of chaos and counterattack. And Ether, the Nemesis's super-advanced AI, ran so far ahead of his wildest hopes, it was like the future trying to catch the past. It sifted through enormous flows of enemy data in real time, recognizing patterns in the seeming chaos and re-evaluating engagement strategies in the blink of an eye. The AI's predictions grew more precise, each advance of the aliens a world-building stone leading to more destruction. But now, every pulse, every burst of disruptive energy unleashed by the Nemesis was met with a mathematical response, a geometric surging and absolute privacy of destruction that left the enemy ships scrambling to disentangle themselves from each other's molecular configurations. It was only when a concerted rip from the Nemesis pierced the final girder screens of a line flagship ship, a giant cruiser that had served as the brain of the alien fleet, that the tipping point of the engagement was achieved. The subsequent explosion was cataclysmic, blasting a cascade of debris and electromagnetic shockwaves through space. The loss of the flagship was more than a tactical setback, but a psychological defeat that rippled through the whole enemy formation. Once confident in their conviction, now faltering as they aware that their own arrogance was their greatest flaw. It was her, now, as the Nemesis seized the initiative, every shot fired, every evasive action taken, increasing the panic in the alien lines. The once organized and deadly armada now scattered, panicked fleet, a collection of bobbing boats, each losing a battle against the all-consuming creativity of humanity's fiercest weapon. It was a vortex of fear and uncertainty as the battlefield simmered on the brink of collapse. And here in this dim light, they trained, their minds racing with the thrill of what was to come within these walls, a crucible of pain and loss that bordered on the precipice of victory. There, in that hostile environment, the Nemesis burned solitary, calling for vengeance. Every move it made was a statement that the aliens had stirred a force much more powerful than they could ever have imagined. The warship's unyielding drive for triumph cast an everlasting imprint on the cosmic stage of war, a testament that would endure as a caution to anyone who misjudged the tenacity of a species cornered with nowhere to go. But in the last moments of the cosmic melee, the Nemesis transitioned from pulverizing insistence to a final, lurching burst of vengeance. And then, with the alien fleet's unity in tatters and its command structure decimated, Commander Adrian Cross took advantage. Through the lenses of the Nemesis sensors, it was a vast tapestry of exploding enemy ships, an array of destruction that both justified its tactical superiority and heralded the coming destruction the alien offensive would suffer. Ether's voice, cool and measured, described a barrage plan coordinated across the targets. All systems peak. Get ready to strike the final blow. The warship's main cannons, which had been subdued until now as they loomed in a state of high energy reserve, began to hum with deadly intent. Quantum disruptors powered up in a series of scintillant bursts, gravity-warping cannon barrels locked onto trajectories to deliberately distort space-time around their munition. At Cross's signal, the Nemesis unleashed a series of rocket barges, each salvo pulsing in perfect time in the symphony of carnage. The initial salvo slammed into the heart of a remaining battle group, a pair of cruisers still struggling to regroup. In a gasp, lances of gleaming force pierced the enemy resilience and shattered them into iridescent fragments that glittered like stars against the darkness. With each strike, the alien ships writhed in agony, their control systems buckling beneath the barrage of cascading waves of energy and gravity. Explosions erupted in quick succession, burying the viewers in clouds of kaleidoscopic debris that shot into the stars. It was not just physical. These were also psychological blows, the final, fatal blows that reduced the proud armada but wrecked things to drift into the ocean debris. As the echo of the explosion faded, Commander Cross's voice reverberated throughout the Nemesis. Press on. Focus fire on every remaining command node and cripple their network. His words energized the crew, moving them to operate in rapid-fire commands. Drones that had been kept in reserve were unleashed to hunt down and destroy any slow-following enemy ships. So their speedy, pinpoint attacks added to the havoc among the aliens, so that none could rally for a counterattack. As the battle continued, the Nemesis's cloaking and temporal shifting systems continued to baffle the enemy. The warship returned at calculated intervals, unleashing torrents of energy before vanishing again into the folds of space. Such erratic yet methodical bombardment gave the alien commanders no time to reform a coherent defense. Each alien ship that had the audacity to come forth was met with an infallible maelstrom that fractured its hull and extinguished its energy core. The Nemesis remained a somber, steely calm even as the final stage of the assault played out. The contrast was visceral, the ship's command bridge holographic displays brimming with the data necessary to determine the scope of the battle's outcome. It was no longer a formidable armada, but instead a vast expanse of burning wreckage and recovery beacons. No longer was this a fight. It was a reckoning, a message being sent in pulses of quantum fury and gravitational wrath. Humanity's long insular hope for peaceful contact had transformed into a deterrent of unimaginable scale, a nightmare to anyone who might dare threaten Earth a second time. In that fateful moment, as the final vestiges of enemy defiance fell silent, the Nemesis carved its name in the annals of history. It wasn't merely a weapon of war. It was the embodiment of humanity's refusal to cower before arrogance and violence. Each pulse, each measured blow, was a testimony to the unquenchable spirit of a race that had emerged from the ashes of treachery to rebalance the power dynamics between them and the stars. In the wake of the fierce bombardment, the silence that descended over the battlefield was as heavy as it was profound. The remains of the alien armada wandered aimlessly through trash and broken dreams, their tight formations reduced to burning rubbish. The Nemesis, its pulsing charge of energy from the last volley still crackling around it, stood over the carnage like an avenging angel, a terrifying statement on humanity's new force of power. Adrian Cross on the command bridge looked at the scenery of purgatory. Now they only flared with lingering remnants of enemy signals and the final breaths of frantic transmissions in their cursed frequency. There was no jubilation in his eyes, only a grim acknowledgement of the cost of survival and retribution. The Nemesis, at that moment, was more than a warship. It was the icon of a hard-won intent, the flag of an admission that the human spirit had been cornered into accepting the title of apex predator. The following silence was broken solely by the relentless buzz of the Nemesis's systems, an unwelcome percussion to the symphony of galactic hubris. Ether, the ship's artificial intelligence, ran the aftermath through her processors with clinical precision. All enemy command networks are offline. All active units are neutralized or in retraction, it said in its steady, pixel-by-pixel tone. The emotionless words pierced every single member of her crew, cementing the lost balance of power. With the Nemesis slowly withdrawing from the wrecked battleground, its tactical displays turned to the wider significance of the fight. Data streams started pouring in from the far corners of the galaxy. Reports of alien empires in disarray, of fleets moving in to regroup, of civilizations taking a breath and trying to grapple with the scale of what had just taken place. The shock was universal. For centuries, the aliens had basked in unchallenged dominance, their philosophies at once laden with the certainty of an overwhelming majority and technological hubris. And now that certainty was blown to bits, the Nemesis had sent a message that echoed well beyond the immediate bloodbath. Do not underestimate humanity. On the bridge, Commander Cross had a private moment, a moment of another kind that felt like a break in his hard or mask of a face. He thought of the virtues that had animated the diplomatic mission and the hand of fate that had brought them here. Humanity had reached out in the hopes of peaceful contact and had been met with unprovoked aggression. But then again, it was that very aggression that had compelled them to open the next chapter in their evolution, to lay the foundation for a weapon so devastatingly effective that it was now striking terror into hearts all across the cosmos. The irony wasn't lost on him. In their pursuit of peace, they had become harbingers of war. But there was a perverse beauty to the resolution. The Nemesis's last act was not just the ultimate exercise of pure destructive force. It was a statement that the age of human vulnerability, when humans were fundamentally weak and fragile, was over. The alien invaders would now have to face off against a species that had learned through devastating loss and relentless resolve how to turn its now most potent tragedy into its deadliest weapon. The actions of the warship spoke louder than any treaty or proclamation ever could. Humanity was not seeking war, but would unleash an unrelenting force against any who dared threaten its existence. Across empty distances, even far worlds and interstellar observers started paying attention. Stories circulated like wildfire, tales of a ship manned by people capable of clearing entire fleets with a single concise blow. The balance of power in the galaxy had been altered forever, and the once dominant alien empires, now bloodied and flummoxed, scrambled to learn how they had been outsmarted by a lone ship. Their leaders, once paragons of unchallengeable power, were left questioning the basis of their strength. Trapped on the cosmic chessboard, the Nemesis had not only made its move, it had checkmated an entire armada. It is now nearly a year after the events of this chapter, and the Nemesis ended its final message by somehow broadcast to all channels in every star system, a warning to all in the silence of their stars. Let it thus be known, humanity, once seen as weak and trivial, is now the master of its fate. We did not ask for this, but we will not be defeated. To those who seek to take away our future, hear me, vengeance is not just a promise, it's our resolve. With the dissipation of that signal across the void, the galaxy was left to come to terms with an inescapable fact: the face of power had forever changed. Humanity, jaded by betrayal but unbroken, had become a prospect that whoever wished to pose as a threat would think twice before attempting. With its legacy sealing it as the triumph of one and the tragedy of another, the Nemesis had left an irremovable spear on the stars, a warning that passed from stars to stars. In the destruction's wake of cosmic genesis, the galaxy started to reckon with a new reality. The debris of the alien fleet hung as bloodied monuments to a hubris nipped in the bud by unwilling humanity's champion. Across star systems, ancient empires fought to hide their shame, clinging to self-delusions and desperately trying to minimize the scale of their loss. In dark rooms, the alien leaders plotted behind closed doors, hoping to overturn decades-old doctrines, rebuilding pride that had been torn asunder by the Nemesis's wrath that hung like a specter, waiting to strike through every hushed salvo. On Earth and its colonies, that fateful encounter became the stuff of legend. In remembrance of those who fell during that titanic first contact, memorials were built to commemorate loss and the harsh lessons learned. In quiet observatories and jammed communal centers alike, scholars and survivors alike haggled over the implications of the Nemesis's rampage. What led to this devastation, this violence, this carnage? Was it the inevitable result of aggression, or was it a grim engine for change that compelled humanity to follow a path of steeled resolve? Commander Adrian Cross, a hero, but a flawed hero, took himself out of the public eye. And in the silence of a lonely outpost, he wrestled with his victory and the evidence of its paradox. Realizing the warship he commanded, the Nemesis, had never meant to be an evil entity, but turned instead the unassailable bulwark of Earth. His private journals, secreted from the eyes of the world, chronicled the gravity of each choice, made in the crucible of conflict, and the weight of a legacy that was equal parts survival and revenge. Across the wider galactic stage, the message was clear: humanity was no longer a bothersome blip to be dismissed. By the time the Nemesis was brought to bear, they knew the power had changed. It struck terror in those who used to have the run of fleets. It was a reminder that the border between peace and war is a dangerously thin one, and that those who feel bold enough to stir the pot may soon find themselves staring at a nightmare they cannot escape. But with time, the Nemesis faded quietly back into the cosmic shadows, its mission accomplished, but its existence eternally scorched into the shared mind of the galaxy. It was a sign, a disembodied deterrent to threats against Earth's fragile future. In murmurs on distant worlds, the story was shared. First contact had gone horribly wrong, and in the aftermath, humanity had roused a power that even the greatest alien empires feared to awake at night. What that fateful day left behind was a stark and enduring impression. Humanity that had once seemed weak and small had risen from the ruins of betrayal to be the nightmare stalking the dreams of its would-be conquerors. But as the stars watched in silence, the legacy of the Nemesis would hang as a reminder forever. Those who sought to wipe out Earth would soon find that in their arrogance, they had indeed planted the seeds of their doom.